This episode of the Blurred Mob contains explicit language. While we want everyone to enjoy the show, sometimes we may say things that are not appropriate for all ages. So, in other words, Mom, Dad, Granny, we cussing. Discretion is advised.
King G, Grow Site, ENT. Rock with it, rock with it, rock with it, rock with it. Let me pop my shit. Let me pop my shit. Hands up.
What's up, y'all, and welcome to the Blurred Mob, your hub for all things black and nerdy. I am your host, Foop, joined by my two co-hosts, Ryan and Ralph. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other streaming service, make sure you hit that follow button so you can get updates from the mob.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on those bell notifications for future uploads.
So today, we're going to be doing a mob review on The Woman King. The Woman King premiered Friday, September 16th, 2022. So, just putting this out here, as always, spoiler warning for The Woman King. If you have not seen it, please go see the movie and come back and listen to the review. We're going to be going through a couple hot takes. But before we get into the movie review, Ryan is a cat dad now.
Yay!
You should have told me you was going to start the video after that. I would have put it in the screen.
I didn't think about it. But Ryan is a cat dad now. I thought about getting a dog a couple times, but I just feel like I'm too busy to take care of an animal at this moment.
Dogs do need a lot more attention. A cat is more so independent.
Yeah, I don't like cats. So if I had to get a pet, it's gonna be a dog.
True.
Why do y'all not like cats? Do y'all just assume all of them are mean and scratch?
No,
Yeah.
I have been scratched by a cat. But I don't feel like I'm a cat person. Like I don't seem like cats are my vibe, you know?
You just gotta meet the right one. A lot of them are actually pretty nice. It's just they go through trauma, and that's when they get all mean.
I'm gonna stick with the dogs. Like, I don't know. I feel like I've always been a dog person.
Same. I'm a pretty big guy, so you know.
I can see you
Alright.
with a little kitten. I can see you with a little kitten.
I don't
Don't walk out here
cats
with no
at all.
Shih Tzu.
No.
Ralph gonna get a teacup dog.
Oh God, he gonna keep it in his Nike duffel bag when going to the
He
gym.
gonna keep it on his shoulder.
That would be cute though.
Ralph come up in the recording, instead of petting that Bulbasaur in the back, he petting his little dog on his
I
shoulder.
can see Ralph with a teacup dog.
Precious. Oh my goodness.
I don't know. That's interesting. I haven't seen Ryan with a pet, so I'm gonna have to see how this goes.
That's crazy because I grew up with some dogs, cats, had a bunny, and a bird. Well, the bird was my little brother's.
Okay.
That's interesting. Like,
and my mom killed my goldfish. She had lotion on her hands when she was feeding it. And she ain't tell me that. She told me it died naturally. But then my dad told me when I got older, he was like, nah, she had lotion on her hands. And I was like, so she poisoned Goldie.
She
poisoned my fish. And I want him at the county
Rest in
fair.
peace, Goldie. Dead from Jergens.
It was Jergens back in the white bottle with the teal little pump.
Well, here's the news, folks. Jergens and goldfish do not mix.
Do not mix.
Jergens and goldfish do not mix. Let's go ahead and hop into The Woman King. So The Woman King starred Viola Davis, Lashana Lynch, John Boyega, and Sheila Etim. And this, as far as like from what I've seen, besides Black Panther, this is one of the biggest black cast action movie that I've seen. So let's go ahead and get into that. How did we feel about this being a all black woman female action movie? I mean, there was some black men in it as well, but the focus being on the black women, the African army, the Ajogi.
All right.
It was an interesting take. I am one of the people who's like, just because it's an all black movie, it doesn't have to be focused on like slavery and all the old stuff like that.
Mhm.
But for that to be somewhat included, and I know we're going to get into that later, it did go about it in a different way that kept it interesting. At first, I wasn't really interested in the movie, but it was pretty well executed in my opinion. The
Mm.
cast, they were really good actresses. I love Viola Davis. It was on point. It gave me a different perspective on her.
What about you, Ralph?
I just want to say, can we really just get a standing applause for everybody in this cast being
They did
so bad?
good. Like
They did
That was
they
some
amazing
they
good
did
acting.
job,
good.
bro.
I pronounced the name of the tribe wrong. It's the Goji, not whatever I said before. But I thought Viola Davis did great. Like given the previous roles that she's had, I've seen her as um Annalise Keaton. If you watch the Suicide Squad movies, you've seen her as Amanda Waller.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
those roles compared to Naniska in this movie is like a complete shift. Like you can really see that she put in the effort to embody this role. And the
Yeah.
supporting actresses did no less. Um Lashana Lynch as
I loved
Izogi,
Lashana. I
Yes.
loved her role.
Sheila Tim as Viola Davis's second in command, Amenza. Like and even like the rest of the army, like you can really see that they put in the work to make this
Right.
production. And just seeing I think the two things that caught me the one big thing that caught me in this movie is that the tribe that this movie is based off of was the inspiration for how the Dora Milaje was going to look in Black Panther.
Right.
So you get that split between like Black Panther was phenomenal, but at the same time it was like it's fictional. Like Wakanda's not real, Dora Milaje is not real, but we step into the Woman King where the Agoji was a real African woman clan.
Yeah.
And to see that on the big screen and to see the actresses and the actors and everybody in the production put in the work to visualize that, I thought that was great.
Yeah, it was very lovely. But just to continue on, um, I loved everything about the movie. That opening scene
Oh yeah.
was amazing, bro.
Oh
Like
yeah.
when I say they went right into it,
Yes,
they
sir.
didn't they gave us a little, like a little Star Wars entrance of the storytelling, and then it
Yep.
went right into it. And I
That
was
was
like,
pretty
I'm here
cool.
for it.
I think that set the tone of the movie because they easily
Yes.
could have went, you know, um started it out subtle and then we get to the action. I
Yeah.
think that was a good opening for a female warrior movie. Like
Yes.
let's get to the jump. Like we finna show y'all that these these women about their business.
Yes.
And that set the tone for like what comes early on because when we start focusing on Naui and her training, it's like when is she going to get to the point that they was doing at the beginning of this movie? Because we know what y'all can do, but now we
Hmm.
seeing that build up to how somebody gets there from starting
I
at the
got
beginning.
I got to give
True.
them their props on that because a lot of shows skip that part, the actual build up when someone's like trying to get good in the show. They
Right.
did a good job of her character. I feel like it was a well paced role from her going from I'm sorry, but I can talk a lot of shit
Hmm.
to now
Hmm.
I'm her. I'm cold. I'm one of them.
It was really good how they like portrayed the process,
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
and you could see that gradual her being sorry to her being really good and seeing that change happening through the situations that they went through instead of
Right.
sometimes you see somebody who's like completely booty and we get a 1 minute montage of them training and now they're just the coldest thing out here, like they're the bee's knees now. But like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that they dedicated, like aside with all of the other storylines and conflicts going on in the movie, I like that they really fleshed out that progression.
Oh yes,
Oh,
that was lovely. The fact that they actually showed more of the training of what Nawi was going through, and the other girls of what they were doing to get ready to get up to that point
mm-hmm.
of being ready to go out for war, or even just let alone fight and fend for themselves. I loved it.
Nah, really. They told, like, putting it all together, like, was great.
Hmm.
Um, but I want to get into some of like the plot lines in the movie because, like I said, we had a lot of different like conflicts and plot lines going along this. Some of them I feel like served the story, and then some of them I felt like was like, okay, why is this
It was
here?
yeah, it pretty much felt like add-ons.
So I want to start with the first plot line where we find out that Naue is revealed to be Naniska's daughter.
It you're going first or
You get? I thought
You go
you had
first.
something. Go.
oh, bet it wasn't well executed. That part, in my opinion, if that was not added to the movie, I it would have not made the movie worse nor better. I felt like it was a very neutral add-on, but I didn't care more so about her baby versus how much I cared about the trauma she experienced when she was captured. Her having the kid kind of felt like, oh, by the way, we're going to throw this in there that she had a kid after looking at baby girl scar because she stuck a shark tooth in her shoulder. That was kind of cruel, but the
Mm-hmm.
way that they kind of threw that in there, it didn't feel relevant.
Yeah.
Like it was interesting, it was fun, and it's like, oh, now I'm attached to this girl who I watched get stronger, and now I kind of care about her more. But I felt like she would have cared about her more even if she wasn't her rediscovered daughter
Yeah.
because of how she grew and developed as a warrior.
Feel like I feel like that storyline would have hit harder if while Naniska and Naui was having their moments where they were bumping heads, that somebody would have pointed out, like, she reminds me of you when you were younger,
Mm-hmm.
or she acts just like you, or whatever, like the cliche,
Better
this is
foreshadowing.
your secret child, right? I think that plot line would have been executed better had they did that, but they didn't mention. They had their moments where they bumped heads like any protege and big leader does, like they always bump heads. But for you guys to make the reveal that she's actually Naniska's daughter that she thought she got rid of all these years ago, it didn't really serve any purpose. I feel like this is the one thing I feel like they tried to do with it, but I feel like this scene would have happened either way. When it came down to Naui, Izogi, and the other warrior getting captured by the
Mm-hmm.
Oyo, and they were in the cave, they were about to get sold and traded, and they made it seem, when they told Naniska that Naue was one of the captives, they tried to make it seem like, oh, this is my daughter, I need to go save her. But at the beginning of the movie they already established, like, the no one gets left behind type thing, like we travel together, nobody does anything alone. And I feel like that statement there would have been enough for her to go and get all three of them, and not the fact that one of them is your daughter. Like, I see what they
Exactly.
tried to do with it, but I feel like it would have happened either way.
Because she already looked at the Koje as her like warrior sisters, but also like her children. She was like a guide to all of them. They all looked
Exactly.
up to her. She was going to save her people regardless.
Right. So how'd you feel
Hmm.
about that plotline, Ralph?
I would have to disagree.
Okay.
With the start of the movie, we have Naniska pretty much being hard on her girls and also saying, hey, follow these set of rules regardless of whatever happens. We did get one foreshadow of Naniska knowing of, things, how things are going to plan out in the future. She's going to meet her quote unquote like beast of herself, pretty much what she was seeing in her dreams when Lord.
Amenza.
Yeah, when Amenza read her the beans, she looked real crazy. She was like, this can't happen. She meets Abode. I think I'm Aboadi. Yeah, I think Aboadi. She meets Aboadi in person. She stands there. She stands there in disbelief, like, holy shit. Like, this is getting real. Your bees is like leading to something. So she comes to realization of that. She pulls Amenza to the side and says, okay, you might be right on this. So that's just one foreshadow. The second foreshadow was her starting to slowly learn and reveal that Naui is her child or potentially her child. She comes to realization of that. So I would disagree on the part that she did go there mainly because her daughter was there for the reason of a mother's intuition of going to go save their own child and their own loved ones, because you can't deny that in a woman's intuition. You can't just throw that out because they already had that foreshadowing of, hey, she already cares about the people that she loved, but she was also willing to pick out people that she loved and try to give them away. But she came to the realization that that was a bad thing to do.
The only reason I would argue that is because when it came to the beans, I feel like that more so foreshadowed the final fight
Yeah.
between her and old dude. I feel like that's what that was more so foreshadowing.
Because the
And then
bees
her
were
going,
like the when they did the nuts is what she called them. The only thing that was foreshadowed is that she was going to meet somebody from her past, which turned out to be old dude. Like that happened immediately. Like after that scene, that happened immediately. But she didn't come to the realization that Nawe could have been her child until after Naui
she saw that scar.
had won that big battle. I mean that big she had completed
She
the
had one that,
test.
yeah,
She
the
won, she
test.
completed the test and she found out that Naue was a orphan. And so Naniska gets into her head like it's not very common for, people be running around, people be found as orphans and stuff like that. So that's when the conspiracy started happening that she may be my daughter. But I think that's the only reason I would disagree with that, because I felt like the nuts thing was referring to, I think his name was like Obey or something like that.
Oba, it's OBA80.
Oh, okay.
Oba Adi, I believe.
And I just didn't get the feel that her being her daughter is what made her truly care. Because like even throughout the movie, she was the problem child. Now I guess that could allude to like, oh, her being a kid and her going against her mother, but at the same time, she was a problem child throughout, and she was trying to get her to see her. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting it's because I'm not remembering the names. I'm sorry for using hers a lot, but she was trying to be seen. And then for the fact that she was being seen, she saw her training, she saw her work hard, she saw her win the competition. I felt like that relationship would have been the exact same, even if it wasn't for the grand reveal of
Right.
them being related.
Because you could tell, like, even before the orphan reveal happened, when Nawe was completing the test, they showed glimpses of the Niska being, like, really watching her. So even if it wasn't like a direct relationship that you guys are mother and daughter, they still showed that she really cares. She really wants Nawe to succeed and she really cares about her. So that's why I'm saying, like, you really didn't have to have the mother daughter reveal to justify Naniska going to rescue them. I feel like that would have happened regardless.
Mm, I don't know. It can go either way, honestly, because I don't know. She was already put in a tough situation to begin with the king telling her to stay and not go, or you will, face the consequences of your actions.
Mm-hmm.
So she was already put in a tough predicament. So the thing would have been really like, if she didn't go and they didn't, and we did not know as the audience that now he was, possibly her daughter or potentially her daughter, would she really have went?
I mean, considering that Nawi was like legit the star soldier, like she won the competition, they had a personal relationship. Like even Aniska, when talking to her in private, like when they was in the baths and everything else, talked about, hey, I don't want you to get captured. I don't want none of y'all to get captured.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because she was projecting her own trauma, saying, I don't want y'all to go through what I'm going through. Like, that's why the daughter part, it's like it's there, but I don't feel like that's the biggest reason. She already developed that bond. She already heard that they got captured. It's like, oh my gosh, her and my other loved ones, my other soldiers, are getting captured and possibly going to be exposed to what I had to experience.
I get what Ralph is saying though, because I can see it this way. To lean towards Ralph's perspective, that I think she would have went regardless, but I don't think if the mother-daughter reveal didn't happen, I don't think she would have went for Naui. I think she might have went for Izogi.
Yeah.
And just so happens that Naui is with Izogi, and they have a strong sister connection that she just would have been brought along because Izogi wasn't gonna leave her. So
Right.
I could see that from Ralph's perspective. Maybe the mother-daughter reveal just gave that extra piece of motivation for
Yeah.
why Naniska is seeing this through.
If
So
anything, the
what's
performance that the relationship that I cared about was Naui and Izogi. That was the
same.
relationship I cared about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I pretty much shed a tear for
I was
Izogi.
very sad when Izogi
When she
died.
dropped, I was like,
I was very sad. I
no.
was like, no, this is my favorite character. How dare you?
and 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 it's the fact that she went against her own teachings. Like, they teaching Naui all this stuff. Don't go back. Fight alone. Be strong. Carry yourself. And here go your mentor coming back like, let me go get you. I'm dead now. And
Yeah,
now he
it
could have made
was.
it out. Like, now we would have been straight regardless if baby girl kept running. That's where it was like, dang, none of y'all stuck to her teachings.
So the
Right.
thing is, with that scene in particular, we see Izogi reach the bottom of the barrel when it comes to emotion, when it comes to fight. She didn't want to do any of that in that cell. She didn't believe in any of that until Nawi actually spoke to her and gave her an actual speech. If
Yeah.
Nawi would have never spoke to her, they would have been gone.
Yeah. But I think it's going back to Ryan's thing about all of the teachings. So Izogi, I saw Izogi as like that hardcore,
Yeah.
like this is this. And with them being captured and her coming to the realization, like I got captured, like everything that I have been taught, I failed at. And you completely see her
Mm-hmm.
shut down, like, and then she even said it to now. It's like, you know what we gotta do now. Like, we gotta slit our throats and call this a day. Like,
Yeah.
like,
like
call
for
it a
real.
day.
She said, like, you know what we gotta do. Like, my arm broken. I can't fight. I'm discouraged. I didn't got captured. You know, I'm never gonna see my sisters again. This is
Yeah.
exactly what Naniska's been talking about this whole time, and I've like failed. So it's like, this is it. Like, but you completely get to see the downfall of that character. And like Ralph said, if now we would have never spoken to her, you know, the rest of the movie wouldn't have happened. Like, sucks. It sucks that
Yeah.
she died. Cause that was my favorite character. And they killed her. But I want to talk about the next plot line that I kind of felt like was a bit unnecessary, was the plot line, the baby romance between Naui and Malik.
I don't think it was
I
needed.
I I feel like that story could have been told without the romantic part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he could have been just used for like
They
information
tried to pull
purposes.
some some reverse Tarzan and Jane stuff, and I was like, y'all cannot be trying to fit a romance story in this movie right now.
You know what? I feel like because now that you got me thinking about it, I feel like this movie tried to cover all bases. It did a great job at like getting a story, and then it was like, hold on, we need a plot twist, the daughter reveal, and we need some like a shock, and then we need some romance. Let's get Nawi a little mixed mulatto boyfriend, and like, and I like. Because even with that, I'm gonna say the same thing for the daughter reveal. I felt so neutral to it. Like, I didn't really get impacted. I did look at Malik and was like, he ain't fully European. He look a little bit more like me than anything. What's going on here?
Right.
And but I was like, it wasn't necessary.
Mhm.
Like if that didn't happen, they could have found another way for Malik to save. Nah, we without the relationship. Like it was
I think
there.
I agree. I think they could have did it a different way. I don't think it had to particularly be a romance. I think it could have just been his pure interest in the homie tribe because he said that his mother was from it, and Nawe being the only one to give him the time of day to speak to him and to let him see that side, because wasn't nobody else trying to talk to him but her.
Nah.
And that connection still could have been there, as like, you were the only one who talked to me about this and showed me what was up, and we had that connection from a friend platonic perspective. I don't think they had to like include the romance part in it to prove that he cared about her.
Shoot, if they wanted to do a little reveal, they could have made those two the same thing. Could have made him her long lost brother or something. His
That
mama
would have
was
made it
her mama. Or
worse.
something.
That would have made it
Yeah.
that would have made it worse. That would have made it worse. Like, what is this? Like, found family? This is not even called the Woman King no more. This is called found family. Like,
Proud family.
nah, like,
Lord.
I just felt like it was, and then the way that they went about Malik's character is that he pulled up and was like completely surprised about at the slave trade. Like, what did you think they were doing over here? Like, he was like, like he was baffled, like at what
Yeah.
they were doing, and I was just like, I. The only way I see it is that they chalked it up. The Europeans chalked it up and was like, yeah, you just come over to Africa and we do this. They just blatantly lied to him. And I get him, he said his mother's dying wish for was him to go visit Africa and to see the Dahomey tribe. So I
Right.
get if they, they sold him a lie and he took the lie because that's something that he wanted to do for his mama. But I can't believe, I can't find it realistic that he really got over there and just didn't think they were selling slaves.
Well, it's like if I have to, think about history, because he was a mixed kid, he probably didn't see the extremes of neither side of his ancestries. Like
Yeah.
he didn't see the extremes of actually being a full-blooded white man, but he also didn't see the extremes of being a full-slaved African boy. So like the thing about it is because he was an in between, like if you look at history, mixed kids back in that time period were treated funny by both sides of the spectrum.
Mhm.
So like him going there, it probably was an awakening call for him. And like they could have played a little bit more to his relationship with his mom, like probably at least one little, I don't know, flashback or something. But all he was told was like, go see the homie. And if he loved his mom, I kind of see it. If he wasn't exposed to all that, I can kind of see it. But it is what it is.
I don't know. Maybe instead of shock, maybe they should have just shown like the discomfort. Because his whole character, like every time we saw him, except for like maybe a couple scenes towards the end, like when shit started hitting the fan, he was trying to romance Noe. And it was like, okay, but maybe his character would have, made an impression on me more if we visually saw his discomfort with everything that was going on as a person, and not him being uncomfortable with the situation because now Nawe is on the block.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Like if he was already sad, it probably would have been more believable. Like if he was already like, man, I gotta see this. Maybe it could have felt a little bit more like, dude, this ain't your first time seeing this if you from Europe.
Yeah. Like,
So for Malik as a character, I know they did say that this is his first time going, to Africa. He's never really been around the actual slave trade because if you recall from the movie, his dad was nothing but a printer.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So he may not have gotten that bad side of what goes on during, that slave trade, but he did probably just meet, the people that worked with his father. So he may
Did
have
they
thought those what?
did they mention if his mom was a free woman or not?
No, she was a slave.
Yeah, she was
She
a
got
slave.
sold.
They said that she got sold.
So, but contrary to popular belief, slave owners didn't have. I mean, like slave owners were the rich Europeans back then.
Yeah.
Apprentice shouldn't be able to afford one if that's the case. For them to meet and all that other good stuff. Unless
I
a
don't
printer
know.
actually was making good money, but like if you look into history, like there was like the amount of slave owners versus
But I
folks who
guess,
didn't have them, very,
but
you know what I'm
maybe
saying?
I don't
I
know, and I
understand.
don't want to speculate. Like maybe
Yeah.
they didn't. It's maybe something happened that where she ended up with the printer with.
Yeah.
So like they didn't go into too much of like how that even like came about, and I don't want to
I don't
speculate.
want to. Yeah.
So
But
but continue
but
your point, Ralph.
so yeah, Malik as a character, he came out once he first touched land at Obadi's territory where they was actually doing all the slave trades and stuff. That's where he first got his actual glimpse of what goes on behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
of like the actual slave trade and people being tied up, chained, and probably to be in his shoes and not know anything about it, that would probably be a shock to a good, majority of people that's not already, familiar with what goes on behind the scenes or
I
even, hasn't been really shown that side or even talked about that side.
I could see that. I could see because he was really close with that one dude, Santo.
Yeah.
And I could see Santo being like, "Hey, I got a boat to Africa. I know you got this big dream of seeing your mother's tribe. You want to come along," but not telling him on the back end that the reason we going to Africa is to go get slaves.
Right. Because even
And he already
Santo,
looked at him kind of lesser.
yes,
So,
he pretty much brought down his whole ego about being there with when he said, like this is my people, all that. And Santo's like, yeah, but you don't know what goes on. You're just, a son to the printer guy that works in Europe, so you don't know
yep.
anything.
And the other
He
scene,
said you broke and everything
Pretty
else.
much, yeah,
and the other thing was when they had put Azogi, Naui, and the other warrior on the block, and he was like, "Yo, this is kind of messed up," and Santo was like, "Chill out before you end up on their block," and I was
yeah.
like, "Yeah,
So I would
I
say it was very some surreal moments for him.
yeah."
Like
I did enjoy
nothing
that
really could
though.
have compared. Like nothing would have prepared you for those moments had we not known about it the same way he did.
Hmm.
Nothing would have been like anywhere near close to what he would have seen.
I get that perspective. I just don't think the romance was
Nah, the
necessary.
romance was not necessary at all. That I
I
will
think
agree with.
that his character and how they went about it, and him caring for Naue, I think that still could have happened without the romance.
Yeah,
Because it really just like ruined the movie for me, and it really just made like certain scenes cringy. Like when it got to the point like, oh my god, are they about to kiss right now? And then they don't kiss. But y'all got like on the precipice of kissing. And I'm just looking like, what? Please don't put that in that movie. Like, this is not the movie for that. Please. Like, please.
yeah. Uh, all of
So
that was not necessary at all. It
it
wasn't.
wasn't. So I want to move on to the big thing. We've gave the movie its props. We've talked about some kind of unnecessary plot lines, but the biggest thing I saw come out this movie is that on the day of the movie, there was a hashtag trending on Twitter saying to boycott the Woman King.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in the theater like, so we boycotted a movie and I'm finna watch it. But the reason the the reasonings behind the hashtag is one that the movie did not historically portray the Dahomey tribe, and it glorified glorified slave traders. I didn't mean to put that in quotations, but they glorified slave traders and softened the reality of the Atlantic slave trade.
Mhm.
So I want to get you guys' perspectives now that we've seen the movie. I want to start with one. How do we feel about the movie not being historically accurate? Because the truth in behind the Dahomey clan is that they were it seems like they were diehard slave traders. Like it didn't that's how they thrive, that's how they stayed rich. Like
Mhm.
all the like from the beginning, the missions that they went on, they would attack at night, they would take captives, and then they would sell them as slaves, which is the opposite of what we saw what they did with the captives after they saved them at the beginning. So,
My whole thing is one, barely any movie is 100% historically accurate, and they always stretch the truth to make it more digestible. Whether it's the Elvis movie, this movie, and I'm not even going to talk about other movies made by Disney that changed the historical accuracy of what they talk about. But secondly, they did mention that the Dahomey tribe was in slave trade, and it was somewhat of an issue simply because Naniska was trying to talk to the king and say, "Hey, we need to not sell our people." And it's not just people in our tribe, it's people of all over Africa. They did allude to that. Now, I understand if people are upset because they didn't focus on that enough. Like if they wanted more focus on the fact that, yeah, the slave trade was horrible and all that, but that wasn't really the focus of the movie.
mhm,
At least that's not what I got out of it. The focus of the movie was the relationships between these warriors, their their training from becoming little, what did they call her, like a fly or something,
mhm.
to becoming strong. Like there was a whole lot of other themes that played a part in this movie, and I don't think the focus was, oh, this is how bad the slave trade was, and let's get mad at our ancestors for doing this with Europeans.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was necessary. The movie was still enjoyable. I don't think the focus was to make the Dahomey tribe just look like these great, amazing people that we should add to our history books and like remember them or something. I didn't get that vibe. In my opinion, that was people just being really dramatic because they ain't seen the movie yet.
I so the pieces that I got from it is that I don't think that was the intention of the movie. I think
Hmm.
Mhm.
because when we were seeing the trailers and even the press tours, they were promoting this as a woman empowerment movie. And then you go see it, and then on the back end of this movie is the Atlantic slave trade. I is my thing is that maybe they could have told this story without the Atlantic slave trade part. Like, because I see it as this. Davis's character Niska was created to have her stand in as someone who was opposed to the Atlantic slave trade. We don't know, like the character that the person that they pulled her name from, we don't know if that character actually stood against the slave trade or she was just, down for the cause. But that's what they formed Viola Davis's character into.
Mhm.
So I I see it as maybe you couldn't still tell the story of the Dahomey tribe without mentioning that they were a part of the Atlantic slave trade. And because of how harsh and how brutal the Atlantic slave trade was, we're gonna have to flip this, like Ryan said, to make it a bit more digestible. But my standpoint is in watching this movie, I wasn't rooting for anybody to sell slaves. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, if anything, if you had to include the Atlantic slave trade in the movie, if anything, I would have wanted to see maybe some resolution that maybe because they did stop selling slaves, but part of it was because they were forced to. But I would have liked to see some resolution that they stopped, trading slaves. But even at the end of the movie, they didn't put out like, oh, we're gonna stop trading slaves. Like it was basically we had this big battle. Viola Davis is the woman king. 9 times out of 10, business as usual. And the other thing I wanted to point out, I is like at the end when they did the whole revolution, when they went to go save Naue and the rest, and they let everybody free. I saw that scene as they didn't really care that there were slaves about to be sold. They came for their people, and you guys just happened to be with their people. So let's free you guys as well. So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
so I don't think they glorified them because I wasn't rooting for either side to like, you know, I was if anything, I was rooting for Viola Davis to beat that man ass because he raped her, but I
Yes.
wasn't rooting for them to win, you know, to win the battle so they can go back to selling slaves. And I wasn't like, oh my God, I want these characters to win so bad, even though they're slave traders. Like I don't that movie didn't give me that vibe. And I can see where it's hard to draw the line between woman empowerment because they did a lot in that area with showing the warrior sisterhood of the Goji and seeing how Naue, an outsider, coming into that and fitting into that sisterhood. And
Yeah.
then drawing the line between that and drawing the line between that these people were actively involved in the slave trade. Like I can see that. And I can see how maybe the women empowerment part was used to the advantage to soften the blow that we had Africans selling Africans.
Yeah.
So I will say that I am conflicted on whether we should boycott the movie or not because I don't think the movie's intention. Because let's look at other movies like the recent big thing was the Emmett Till movie. The Emmett Till movie was created with the intention to continuously inform people of what happened to Emmett Till. That was the intention of the movie. I don't think the intention of the Woman King was to fully inform people on the Dahomey tribe and how they were as slave traders. I think the intention of the Woman King was to tell the story of the Agoji, and maybe you just couldn't tell that story without mentioning the slave trade. Like,
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if people enjoyed the movie, say if you're a parent trying to educate your kid on your history or American history, this movie probably would have got somebody interested.
mhm,
Oh, is the Dahomey tribe real? Is the Okoje real? Who are these
the
people?
Agoji.
That might make a child or a young adult, a teenager, or somebody actually go out and educate themselves indirectly, which in my opinion is still a good thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I I get it, but I think what also the movie did, I think the movie did a good job through Viola Davis' character to show that this situation is not as black as white as it seems. Like she was completely against like it got to a point where she was completely against like Africans selling Africans and she was trying to offer the king new ways of getting income, but
Right.
it wasn't just as easy as like telling the king and showing the king like the proof. Like he actually had to believe that this was going to work, like the politics and everything that aligned with it between these African tribes, and plus the fact that they were at war with another tribe that was doing the same thing. So I think they did a good job of showing the conflict of it. I
Hmm.
think what people were looking for was like, and I get it, like they were I feel like they were looking for the Agoji to be truly villainized as slave traders.
Yeah.
And instead of the movie one, I can see people being pissed off because this movie was promoted as a woman empowerment movie, and then we get there and it's a slave trade, and then it's like, y'all, WTF. Like I get that 100%. But I don't think they just fully glorify them as slave traders neither. Like I wasn't rooting for anybody to sell slaves. It kind of like at some points I felt uncomfortable that, you know, in my head, I'm like, what did y'all pitch to Viola Davis to even do this, you know?
Yeah.
But
Uh,
I agree with Ryan too. Like it opens the conversation. Like every movie based on history is not historically accurate. We've seen it in movies like Selma. Hidden Figures is one. Is where they created a character solely for the purpose of the movie. The guy didn't. I
Elvis.
can't remember his name, but they made him up solely for the purpose of the movie. And I have this discussion with my aunt all the time, and my aunt's justification of it is that there were people like that. So to embody the people who were making those choices, they created that character to embody that vision. And maybe that's what, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's what Viola Davis's character was for. Like we don't know for sure that there were people who opposed what the Dahomey tribe was, like people within the tribe that was despising what they were doing. But
right.
maybe there were some people, and to embody that ideal, Naniska was created.
I agree.
But
I mean, I would say the inaccuracy of the movie, I was all right with it because, again, I'm agree with you, Food. I don't want to see slave trade stuff while I'm watching a movie. And as a black community as a whole, we complain about it so much about seeing, that kind of stuff. So to see
I
that people,
complain.
yeah, yeah. So to see that people actually are boycotting it being historically accurate because it doesn't include, enough about the slave trade is very contradicting for the people that don't want to see the movie that also may support boycotting the Woman King because the Woman King, like you said, Food, is not about the end all be all history of what happened during that time. It is about
mhm,
the Agoge and how they're actually growing up, how they come together, their sisterhood, everything about them. It's not about the actual slave trade.
mhm,
So I was perfectly fine with it. I didn't they put just enough in there for me to not be like, okay, this is enough. I don't want to see anymore.
yeah.
Right.
Like
I
it pushed me to the edge of being uncomfortable,
mhm,
except I wasn't like, okay, I'm ready to go.
yeah.
So
I don't know. I kind of feel like they could have left it off. Like if the movie was focused on the Agoji as them being a all female warrior army versus Oyo and the beef that they had, then call it the Woman King, and there's that. And
mhm,
but you tied the Atlantic the Atlantic slave trade part into it, and I think that's where people started raising red flags, because I can see it as, if you're going to tell this part of the story, tell it right. I can
yeah,
from that perspective, I can see it. Like if you're going to tell the story of the Dahomey tribe and their involvement in the Atlantic slave trade, tell it right,
right,
and don't soften the blow, and don't make it seem like that they were just all good. They were just completely against it, because as history tells, they weren't. So I mean, I get it from that perspective. And maybe they should have adjusted the movie. If they didn't want that to be the focus, maybe just don't put it in the movie at all. But maybe this goes into the thing, and I'm glad you brought that point up, Ralph, is that us, not always enjoying movies that are focused on our history, because they do get brutal and they do get discomforting. And
yeah,
and maybe we should start looking at different stories, to
yeah.
tell.
Well, you get me excited, food. This is the conversation I love having.
Like, like
I
I
I've been saying we need more movies with black people, and the emphasis not on them being just black people, just truly
like
include
why we
us.
can't
True inclusion.
like why can't we tell stories of us? Like I The Woman King was a really good movie, but having that in the back of your head that this is not historically accurate and you're not able to fully, you know, yay, Viola Davis, because y'all was selling slaves. You know what I'm saying? And maybe
Yeah.
we just need to look into like telling different stories. Like while I was waiting for the movie to come on, they showed a Dungeons and Dragons trailer. Why we can't get like a black Dungeons and Dragons? You know what I'm saying?
I've been saying this.
Or
Where's our black main characters in rom coms? Just like some woman met a dude at a coffee shop and now they in love. Where them movies at? With
like
black people as the main characters.
cause
On
I get
Hulu.
it. Like I get it. If you're gonna tell the story, tell it right. And if their intention was like to not focus on it, then maybe the question is why tell the story at all? You know, why bring emphasis to this group of people if you're going to have to tweak this movie so much that they look like saviors in the Atlantic slave trade and they weren't, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's a conflict of, and I don't want to get into politics, but I feel like this is why we need more black people in Hollywood or production companies really saying what we want to see.
Hmm.
Like what representation and inclusion really looks like isn't a focus on our race. It's to the point that our race is there, but we are still shown just like anybody else. We can play any role, we can be in any genre, just like anybody else, and truly be included.
Exactly.
And I feel like the last movie that really made a step in that direction was Black Panther.
Hmm.
But watching a movie like this was a good movie. The Woman King was a good movie. But we still need to we need to take a lot more steps forward before we get to where we need
Exactly.
to be
Like
at.
you
Yeah.
guys told a good story, but where you guys pulled the story from is like I went to go see it with my two
Mm.
friends, and even though we walked out the movie saying that it was good, like we really had to sit down and come to the realization that we just watched yet again another movie about the Atlantic slave trade.
And
Yeah.
how many slavery related movies have there been in the past 5 years, 10 years?
Right. So it's just like you guys promoted this movie, and I could see it as that, like you guys promoted this movie as a woman empowerment movie. You guys are showing all of these behind the scenes clips about how much training they had to do for this movie and showing all the fight scenes and the action scenes and the press tour. Like they're mentioning that this movie comes from historic background, but you're also not mentioning what the historic background is. And
Yeah.
now we watched the movie and it's yet again another movie about the slave trade, but you guys tried to cover it up with woman empowerment, you know?
Right.
And that's I think that's where the conflict is coming in between people who see this as a really good movie and people who are seeing this as being like this is the wrong side of history that this story is telling.
Yeah.
And maybe it just comes to the fact that we need to start telling better stories. Like if you're going to tell a story about our history, tell it accurately, you know.
And let's tell some new stories. We can talk about tribes in Africa and not have to go to. There's many
To
tribes in Africa.
slavery.
There's a whole lot of mythologies. Look up Egyptian mythology. It's very interesting. We see so much Greek and Norse. Like there's
Yeah.
so much interesting material and history in the continent, not the country, the continent of Africa, which is filled with different countries and different mythologies and cultures. Like there's a lot more stories that can be told just from that general region. And I want us to be a lot more creative. I'm not a producer, but I hope some producer out there is.
Yeah, I think this was
Yeah.
creative maybe in the wrong way. Like like you guys made a good you guys were very creative, but on the back end you guys had to tweak. You were your you had to tweak and be creative of a story about an African tribe that was fully involved that made a living off of the slave trade. And maybe that was maybe the wrong way to be creative.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say boycott the movie because I did enjoy the movie. I would just say that make sure that you understand what you're getting into when you watch this movie. And also take the time to educate yourself on who the Dahomey clan really is and who the Agoji really are. Because even in doing my research, some of the women in the Agoji army were slaves. They came as slaves
Yeah.
and joined the army. And then you had some women who came who were rebellious as Naui, and I'm here to give my daughter to the king. Like some people ended up there like that too. So I wouldn't say boycott the movie as a whole, but I would say to understand what you're getting yourself into and to make sure that you do your research. Because
Right.
this movie doesn't have a fine line between what the intention of this movie is. There's not, to me, there's not a fine line on what the intention of this movie is.
I say use this movie to continue or start a discussion about what we really want out of about movies that are focused on black people and black culture. I feel like we should definitely use this as a benchmark in that conversation. I would encourage anybody to go watch it because of that.
Yeah. Like don't just get caught up in all of the fight scenes and the fight scenes were really good. I'm not going to hold you.
They were fired. They were
But
They were
fired.
like
fire.
don't get
I ain't
caught
gonna.
up in the confetti that we forget where they pulled this from.
Yeah. Yeah. Doing your research and just taking the time out to actually learn about more history that we have been introduced to through movies
Mhm.
is very beneficial because you never know how much of Africa we don't really know or learn about or even the
Mhm.
history about it. So I see this
So
movie
And
as
at that
being a
much.
good and a bad.
So much. Oh man, there's so
But
much
even
out there,
at
bro.
that point, I didn't know who the Agoji were before seeing this movie. But
Same.
and now I kind of feel like we missed out on an opportunity to learn that side of history because they were so focused on making this a woman empowerment movie that they ignored some of the pieces. And like though it may not have been favorable to see, but like we're missing that piece. Like we were missing that piece of that this is not black and white. And going back to my earlier point, I think they did what they could. And for the movie alone, I think they did a good job at showing that, things weren't, black and white, that there were some
Right.
gray areas. But I think maybe they should have really hammered in on what those gray areas were.
Hmm.
You're right.
So those are my final
It was just
thoughts
interesting.
on the Woman King. You
Yeah.
guys got any final thoughts?
Nah, I went
Um,
through mine.
yeah, we talked about it. I'll ask this: if there was a second Woman King, a sequel, what would y'all want out of it?
Nothing.
Okay, so before I answer this question, I just want to say that there needs to be no sequel to this movie.
Yeah.
I agree.
I just want to
I agree.
start my statement that there doesn't need to be a sequel out of this movie. And the way that it ended, I don't know what I would want out of a second one. Like because you guys have already painted the tribe in this way that we already know isn't historically accurate, is it appropriate for you guys to continue this story? Because you're going to have to stick with what you showed in the first movie. So is it even appropriate to make a sequel knowing what we know?
Fair.
What say you,
Ralph
Ralph?
said, "Nah."
Scrap it. Just don't do it. Don't
Like
do it.
I don't think this deserves a sequel. I think even with my idea of them not including the slave trade part in it and focusing on the Home versus the Oyo,
Hmm.
I probably still would have said no, that this didn't need a sequel.
because the end of the movie, it felt like a normal ending. It didn't feel like a
Right.
Marvel-ish or, you know, a leading-ish ending to like, hey, we're gonna have another movie coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt like the end of a story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there it goes, everybody. This is our mob review on The Woman King. Let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube how you felt about the movie. If you are listening to this, hit us up on social media and let us know how you feel, whether if you agree or disagree, or if we missed, you know, a talking point in the movie. So, with that being said, I want to thank you both, Ryan and Ralph, for joining me on another mob review. Thanks to everybody who watched, and lead us out.
All right. Thank you guys for listening and or watching. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram at the Blerd Mob Pod. Make sure you guys follow us on TikTok and Facebook at the Blerd Mob Podcast. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at the Blerd Mob. And with that being said, peace.
Hands up. If you loving where you at, stand 10 toes down. Shawty ain't no looking mad. You can let them haters hate when they asking why I'm smiling.